Welcome back to Son of Chelsea. Daniel Childs here for my team selector ahead of the game against Brentford. Sunday night at Stamford Bridge, 7 p.m. A very unique kickoff time. When you factor in, we did play in Kazakhstan on Thursday. I guess it's a little bit more understandable, but very unique. And a big chance for Chelsea to make it 7 wins in a row in all comps. Keep this winning run going in the Premier League. Keep the momentum and the positive feeling. But there is trepidation. I think obvious trepidation. And to be honest, not much of it based on actually this season. The trepidation comes from our history against Brentford. The next 2 Premier League games are soaked in, I think, fear for Chelsea fans. Because naturally, these are 2 games, Brentford at home, Everton away. Games that Chelsea historically have been very, very poor in. And in recent times, especially against Brentford, very bad in. However, we're going to look at some of the numbers, maybe some cause for optimism that Chelsea can break this curse, and some of the things that, Chelsea really need to do a lot better against a team like Brentford, who do pose some threats that maybe other teams don't. So we'll look into that. I do quickly want to say, though, 2 things. Obviously, my collab with Jan, Football Therapy, is up on the channel now. Please go and check it out. It's the first part of a 2-part conversation. As I said yesterday, the second part is going to come out after Christmas, where we look ahead to 2025. But please go and check that out if you haven't already. The other thing, I forgot to say it annoyingly in my last video, which I think was the Astana one, because we recorded the Jan conversation a few days ago before this happened. And that is Son of Chelsea passing 36k on YouTube. Incredible. Just thinking, back to a time when I didn't even have 600 subscribers or even 6,000 subscribers. Now 36k on the road to 40k. I just want to say a massive thank you. Your kind comments, maybe I say it a bit too much, but I just want to keep on saying how humble it is, to kind of look at the channel, to look at how much it's grown since I started it in 2014, and to keep getting new people on the show in the community. So thank you so much for that as we ramp up now to 2025. But let's jump into it. So team news-wise, Mudryk's illness still feels a little bit of an unknown, whether he's going to be ready for this game or not, because he's missed the last few because of illness. But we definitely know, obviously, no Fofana, no Reece James, and no Pedro Neto. He played in Astana as kind of, I guess, punishment for getting himself that 5th yellow against Spurs last weekend. So he is unavailable for this game, which of course opens up a spot in the starting 11 for Maresca. But other than that, kind of seems okay, unless there are any kind of bad shocks we see on Sunday. The only other one I think is Romeo Lavia, which obviously had a hamstring issue, but it doesn't seem like there's been any big news on him maybe missing this game, but we'll see how it plays out. Let's look at Brentford. So historically, Brentford have done amazingly well against Chelsea since getting to the Premier League in 2021. Other than that very first game that we played at their stadium, where Ben Chilwell scored in what was a very lucky win. I remember Edouard Mendy having to do a lot of heroics to even get 3 points in that game. Brentford have won all 3 of their appearances at Stamford Bridge in the Premier League. The 4-1 win in April of 2022. I think it was the 2-0 win in May of 23. And last year, the 2-0 win at the Bridge against Pochettino's Chelsea. Chelsea have actually only won 1 of their 6 league games against Brentford. The only other time we've beaten them in that period was under Thomas Tuchel, and that was away from home in the Carabao Cup quarter-final. So against Brentford, they really are a bogey team. I mean, they tick all the boxes there. It's kind of interesting to figure out why, because when you actually look at them this season, their home form remains really immaculate. I saw some mad number that they're kind of up there with the likes of Real Madrid in terms of home league form, which kind of speaks to how well that place is and really is the bulk of maintaining their Premier League status. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I think it's the closed nature of it, their style of football being a lot more direct, good counter-attacking players, good physicality, all things that I've referenced this before, and you may have heard me say this before, so it's not new analysis, but I do look at Brentford as kind of a reincarnated Bolton or Blackburn from the mid-2000s. Not the greatest Premier League team, don't have the greatest players, but they are a very efficient and effective Premier League team that cause the majority of teams in the league a lot of awkwardness. So that is what has made them a very effective team. However, I think away from home, there's no getting around it. They have been pretty abject this season. Just looking at it in terms of away from home, they've lost 6 of their 7 Premier League games. Their last away win came in the Carabao Cup against Colchester. So away from home, they travel pretty terribly. I mean, this is not a long trip for them, but they do travel terribly. In terms of looking at their overall numbers this season, or kind of stats, won 3 of their last 5 games. Top scorer, Yohan Wissa, who's very much developed from kind of a rotational player for Ivan Toney. Ivan Toney no longer there. Doesn't seem to be a problem for them in the goal scoring aspect, because in terms of goals this season, they are only second to Chelsea for goals per match. So they are frequent goal scorers. They're third for accurate long ball, so still playing that direct game. But in terms of defensively, not as rigid as they have been in the past. 6th for XG conceded. So defensively, it hasn't been amazing. There has been a kind of a basketball feel to a lot of their games, especially at home at the G-Tech, compared to away from home, where it doesn't feel like they're able to have the same momentum. And it's whether Chelsea can capitalise on that. Because I think for Enzo Maresca, we know what this game could be in a really bad universe, because we've seen it happen a number of times. Brentford come to the bridge, they sit in that low block, they make it awkward, and then they use their ability at set pieces or crosses to kind of get physicality, to use a Collins, a Pinnock to get forward and maybe get on the end of a cross if Chelsea defensively aren't good enough and alert enough. That was the problem last year. And on counter-attack, they've got Bryan Mbeumo, who at times has been playing more of a wing-back role this year. Carvalho, Wissa, Rodriguez. I think Norgard has been always an effective midfielder for them. And even Lewis Potter has developed, as a younger player in Brentford's squad, is now really developing into a more consistent Premier League starter and actually someone who impacts them in the final third. They are a cohesive unit. I mean, they're 9th in the Premier League, so not that bad, given they're ahead. I think that's ahead of Spurs, so they're doing quite well this season. So there is a threat there, even if away from home statistically they've been pretty abject. Chelsea are the best goal scorers in the Premier League. We are a ferocious attacking unit at the moment. That is what gives me more confidence than recent times against Brentford. Brentford have never come up against just a Chelsea attack, and this Chelsea attack, as we saw last week, can even fall behind in games and have the confidence to create opportunities. And against the Brentford team, who are giving up a lot of opportunities, there is maybe some belief that with more attack-minded players in their team, the rigid nature of Thomas Frank's Brentford that have come to the bridge before and really undone us may not be as effective. So let's get into our starting 11, because we need to avoid those things. I think Chelsea have to be a lot more switched on defensively, because I think one of the things that Brentford have always been very good at is, clinging on to leads at the bridge, but also just making it awkward. Chelsea have to not fall into their game, because I think Brentford will want to come to the bridge and kind of drag down the quality of the game, make it really stodgy and kind of awkward and slow. Chelsea have got to keep up that and that momentum and try and exploit the fact that when you look at their setup, if he goes with the 11 Thomas Frank that he did last time, with a still kind of this 3-back system, but Bryan Mbeumo and Lewis Potter are attacking wing-backs. Whether he goes for that again, there should be space in behind for Chelsea, particularly out wide to attack, where we can be so devastating. But let's look at this team. There are a couple of things that are questionable, but given the way Maresca rotated in midweek, there is I think a general understanding of who's going to come into this game. Robert Sanchez will start in goal. Now, I think that, sure, there's maybe more of an argument in this game that you could go to that 3-back system. But I just ponder, A, because Tosin played the majority of the Astana game, and B, we don't have Wesley Fofana. I do wonder whether Maresca will be a little bit spooked for how that first half against Spurs went defensively, and instead we'll go to a more conventional back 4, Malo Gusto right back, who can invert. Levi Colwell shifts over to the right, Badir Shield on the left, and then of course left back Marco Correa, hopefully with the correct boots this time. In midfield, that means that I'm going to sacrifice Romeo Lavia, because Caicedo's been arguably Chelsea's most consistent player this year, and Fernandez is in the form of his life. If Fernandez keeps up this goal scoring form, he is going to become a revolution really in Chelsea's midfield, because getting consistent goals from a number 8 from a central midfielder has not been something that we've been able to call upon that frequently since the retirement of Frank Lampard, really. So that's something that's huge for Fernandez, and really is kind of a no-brain. These two are kind of consistent starters for Chelsea at the moment, and it's understandable why. Who's going to fill Neto's place? I think it's quite obvious. I think it's Noni Madueke. I think that, sure, Noni's been kind of targeted by Maresca, not badly, but kind of, challenged in public. But he has been a productive player for Chelsea, and he didn't start in midweek. I think he's a really effective player. I think he's someone that needs kind of that kick up the backside because he is so talented, because he has such direction and output in his game and at times real intensity. It's, I think, reminding him that to be at this level, you need to keep it there consistently, because now, unlike in recent times at Chelsea, there is real competition in that area. If you aren't up to it, I know Neto suspended for this game, but Joao Felix, if he's got over his injury, could start here. Of course, Christopher Nkunku could take up a role in Chelsea's attack. So you need to be at it 9 times out of 10, even 10 times out of 10 to maintain your place in the starting 11. So I understand that strategy, and hopefully it pays off for Maresca in getting a response from Noni on a more frequent basis. Because the last time he started a Premier League game against Southampton, he scored. Cole Palmer, obviously, once again starting. Jadon Sancho, last 2 Premier League games, 2 Premier League goals. I think he starts again here. Needs to keep shooting. That is something that he needs to keep doing. And Nicholas Jackson, hopefully, can return to the form we saw pre-Spurs. I mean, I got a question on Added Time about, is Jackson disappointing? You can't just forget what he did the previous 2 weeks. That was a rare, really poor performance from Jackson. Most of the time, he's a very effective Chelsea player, and he really makes the difference, I think, in the final third for a number of ways, and has been a pretty consistent goal scorer. So hopefully that will continue and he can get back to his goal scoring form in this game. So those are my thoughts for this game. It is an awkward one. I kind of do think that if Chelsea can overcome this mission, it is in some ways more significant. This sounds silly, and I'm sure majority of you will disagree, because of course, not beating Spurs would have been a problem. But in some ways, based on recent Chelsea history, beating Brentford at home, we simply have not done it. And I think it would be a sign of Chelsea going up another level, because they can do it in games where it can be a little bit awkward. And just finding a way to win in this game is kind of the most important thing for me. Of course, we want a good performance, but you got to beat Brentford. You've got to get the 3 points, and then we can move on to the Shamrock and Everton games before Christmas. So those are my thoughts. Let me know your predicted lineups in the comments below, and I will see you again very soon. All the best.